Hey guys, welcome back to Reborn Furniture Designs. I'm Renee and this is
Emma.
And today we are going to go through not all of them, probably about half of the pieces that I did before I started recording for YouTube. So we're going to take it way back to the beginning, go over the pieces, how I got them, what I did to them, mistakes that I made, because there was a lot, what I've learned from it, what I would have done differently, and then we can talk numbers, the cost of the piece, the money that's invested, what I listed it for, and how much profit I got in return. Let's go way back to piece number 1. Remember I mentioned a desk that was given to Emma. She was old. She was worn down and beaten, covered in nicks and dings. Her child woke up every morning and chose violence. She was in desperate need of a makeover. So the first thing I did was clean it, which I had right. This was before I learned everything that I know now. I didn't know much of anything. So I just grabbed like whatever cleaner I had in my kitchen, sprayed and wiped. Mistake number 1, you want to use a degreaser. Always use a degreaser. Mistake number 2, always rinse. You gotta get clean rag, fresh water, wipe the whole thing down and remove the degreaser. I didn't do that. Then I think I might have scuff sanded, which was good. You want to do that to this girl. Rough up the surface a little bit, give the paint something to hold on to. I think that I did that. I do remember filling some of those nicks and dings with some wood filler and sanding that away. And then I went into my basement and looked and found whatever paint that I had, which was a white latex paint, and I used that to paint it. Another mistake, I did not prime. Huge mistake, you want to prime. Blocks stains, it blocks odors, it blocks wood tan and bleed through. Always prime. Also, I no longer recommend using latex paint for painting furniture. I am like tried and true chalk paint girl. I can go over the reasons why for that another day. But yeah, it had like these blocky pulls, like the handles on the drawers. Obviously those were really dating it. I had to kind of like disassemble each drawer to pull off those pulls. So then I put them back together, drilled some new holes, and I ordered some cute little girly pulls off of Amazon, like little 2-inch pulls. Put those on the front of it. The round knobs that came on the desk, I spray painted those black to match the new pulls. And that was that. Another mistake. I didn't seal it. Huge mistake. Seal your paint. Always, always seal it. Yeah, there's not really any numbers for that one to talk about. It was given to me for free. The paint I already had, the sandpaper I already had, and I didn't sell it. I kept it for my daughter, so no numbers there. Now my first official flip, I found an old cedar chest on Facebook Marketplace. It looked so much better in the pictures than it did in real life. My first mistake, I was so excited to get going and finally have a piece to flip that when I looked at it at the seller's home, I saw that it was in horrible condition and I bought it anyway. I shouldn't have done that. This thing was nasty. It was falling apart. It was gross. And I paid $15 for it. It wasn't even worth $1. But I did it anyway. I brought it home and oh, you guys, look at this thing. Like, it's bad. I mean, I think there was like gum stuck to it. It was filthy. The veneer was separating, I think on the inside and the outside. One of the boards on the bottom of it was falling apart. It was in horrible shape. It had those blocky handles again, like the desk did. So I started this one out with a very, very deep cleaning. Cleaned the thing top to bottom really well. I probably should have stripped it. If I knew back then what I know now, I would have stripped away all that old nasty paint. But I was also so busy removing the veneer, which is not an easy task. So I don't have a heat gun, which I recommend a heat gun for stripping paint, or if you need to loosen any kind of glue, so like the glue that's holding on the veneer. I didn't have that. So what I did was took the chest apart. Basically, I had to like remove a couple walls of it. I laid a towel on top of it. I grabbed my steamer like you would use on like a dress or drapes or something. And I sprayed the whole thing with water, and I cranked my steamer up as hot as it would go. And I essentially ironed, but you can use an iron as well. I didn't have an iron. And you iron the towel, make sure you use enough time on each section to thoroughly loosen up that glue, and then scrape. It's time consuming. I had to do it on the inside and the outside. I had a bunch of spots that I had to put wood filler and sand it down. I eventually gave the entire thing a good sanding, and I primed this time. However, because this was on raw wood, some of it being cedar, it was cedar veneer, but cedar nonetheless. And with it not being in good shape, I needed to paint over it and cover that up. I should have used a primer that blocks stains and wood tannins. In other words, I should have used a shellac-based primer, but I didn't. I think I used a water base. Like, even an oil base would have worked better than what I used. And then I painted the outside in white. I painted it in a white chalk paint. Painted the inside with a black chalk paint. I did seal this one, but the wood tannins kept bleeding through, and I didn't know how to handle this yet. So I'm like, oh crap, let me put another coat of paint on it. We're good. A couple days go by, the wood tannins start coming through. I didn't really know what to do about it. Now I do. Now I know shellac-based primer, or I can get just like a can of shellac spray, hit it with the shellac, and that will seal it all in. All of those wood tannins, any stains, any odors, it all gets locked in. Oh, so I also had to rebuild the bottom. One of the boards on the bottom of the chest was falling apart. So I removed that board, and then I had to cut a new board to fit it. And I didn't have, I don't have like a table saw, so I needed to do like a little jig-jag cut. So I used my jigsaw. It was the first time I had ever used it, and it was right before I was going to be taking Emma to soccer practice. And I'm using this jigsaw, and it got stuck in one place. And I didn't know really what was happening. I pulled it out, and the blade was covered in black, and I just thought it hit like a dark spot in the wood or something. And so I grabbed the blade to clean the black off of it, and that was a burn mark because of the friction in the wood, and I singed my thumb. That burn was so bad. Oh, so the front of the chest had old like trim on it that was all broken and falling off. I rebuilt that. So something I forgot to mention about the desk was it was a roll top desk, which I'm not really into that. So I removed the whole roll top design, which left me with a bunch of pieces of half round, which essentially, if you don't know, is like if you have a thick like dowel and you cut it in half and it gives you like a semicircle shape. That's what I had, and a bunch of those, so I could use those for a later project. which I did. I cut them down into angles, and I made like a frame design on the front of the chest, and then I lined the inside of that with glued on jute rope, which I was hoping would appeal to the farmhouse audience. I just stressed the outsides of it a little bit, and I took pulls from another piece that I was working on at the same time. I cleaned those up, spray painted those black, and put those on each end in place of those blocky ones that I took off. It was like an entirely new piece. I couldn't believe my eyes, because she was an ugly duckling before I got my hands on her. Whew. She was rough. Listed it on Facebook Marketplace for $125, and within like minutes of listing it, somebody wanted it. My supplies, I paid $15 for the chest. My supplies surprisingly was only about $10, because a lot of the stuff I already had. Had I needed to buy the wood and stuff, it would have been a lot more expensive. You all know that wood prices have skyrocketed. Sold it for $125, giving me a profit of $100. Now, in hindsight, was all the work that I did and burning my thumb and all of that worth $100? Probably not. No, not even probably. It wasn't. But it was $100 that I didn't have before, and I was learning, you know, like it was my first flip, and I ended up being really proud of myself. I still had mistakes, and I'm sure the person who bought it is dealing with those mistakes now, like the bleed through, and I apologize if you're seeing this, but I was still proud. I think that's everything for that one. Okay, so that other piece I said I was working on that I used the pulls from was a dresser. The dresser I got on Facebook Marketplace for $10. I was learning more as time went on. So this one, I think I actually knew a little bit better about what I was doing. So I cleaned it top to bottom with a degreaser, rinsed it, scuff sanded the whole thing, primed it with a shellac-based primer to seal it all in, and then I painted it in the color Mineral by Waverly Expressions chalk paint. Which, why did they get rid of that stuff, by the way? It was great and cheap. I love Waverly. So I painted the entire thing, Waverly, the tops, the bottoms, the drawers, all of it. And then I decided it was too gray. I needed a little dimension. So I wanted to give the top of it a wood look, because the dresser itself was I think the top of it was laminate. So there wasn't anything for me to like sand out the raw wood. So I made a faux wood look using like, excuse me, what is it called? Like a glaze. But it's actually, so Waverly had a product called Antique. It's supposed to be a wax, but it's not really a wax because all of their products are water-based. So it's basically just like a dark brown paint, and it kind of goes on like a stain. So I just got a kind of wiry bristle brush, like a natural bristle brush, put a little bit of that Waverly Antique on my brush, and I went back and forth over the paint, the top of the paint, to give it a wood look. So in the end, it looked like stained wood, but it was actually paint. Then I ordered some pulls from Amazon. I saw some little like geometric shaped gold pulls, and I thought, oh, those are so cool. I want them. So I got them, put them on the dresser. Now looking back, I think they're awful. They're awful looking. I should have done dark pulls, but you know, whatever. I was starting out and I made mistakes. I listed that piece for $150. I got a message asking if I would take $140, and I probably shouldn't have, but I said yes. They came, they loved the piece, but then the husband was messing with the drawers and found that one of them wobbled. It was missing its guide that goes along the track. And so now I'm like, oh my gosh, they're here to buy this thing, and there's the mistake that I overlooked. I didn't replace the drawer glide on it. So then I'm like, okay, well, you know, that's an easy fix. How about I show you what to buy and I take $10 off the price for you? So they were cool with it. They're like, okay, yeah, that's fine. So in the end, I sold the dresser for $130. Between the cost of the dresser and the supplies, my profit in the end was about $95. Again, not huge, but this one really wasn't a ton of work, thank goodness. Next was a living room table set. It was a coffee table and 2 end tables. Got them for $15 on Facebook Marketplace. Oh boy, these tables put me through the ringer. For starters, the top of it looked like planks of wood, and I should have left it that way. But for some reason, I was itching to have a completely smooth top, and I wanted to give it a stenciled border. So I went through a ton of wood filler and spackle and whatever else I could use to fill all of these deep grooves between each plank and try to sand it down smooth. It didn't work. If I knew then what I know now, Bondo for starters. If you want something that is going to be not all grainy and gritty, and you want it to be very hard and durable, like a tabletop, corners, something like that, you want Bondo. It comes as a putty with a tube of hardener. You mix them together and it dries really fast. You have to work fast. I should have used Bondo to fill that. Then I made the mistake of the base and the leg. So the top of it, I painted gray. The bottoms, the legs and stuff, I painted like an off-white creamy color. I did not use the right primer. I don't know what is my problem? I don't know. But I used an oil-based primer, which if any of you guys have worked with an oil-based primer, that stuff is thick and sticky and it does not go on nicely. So then I just had like these really gross looking legs. So after doing all of the work of cleaning them and sanding them and filling them, because they were covered in like scratches and little holes from, like, I don't even know, the designer probably. I had to fill all of those to make them smooth, sanded it all down, painted it with this awful primer. It looked horrible. So then I had to resand all of that down. Then I got, I couldn't find the primer that I wanted, which was a Zinsser Bin shellac based primer. I couldn't find it, but I found a can of spray shellac. So I hit the legs with the spray shellac, re-primed over that. I think that's what I did. This was a long time ago. And then I painted it. And then I think when I sealed it, I used a polyurethane. I might be remembering wrong, but it yellowed. And that is a huge problem when you're painting with a light white color. You have to use the right sealer or it will yellow. Yellow is not what I was going for. Then I got this cool tribal design stencil and I decided I wanted to do the perimeter of all 3 tables in this design, and I mixed up some paint colors to use, and I was trying to learn how to do stencils properly. Well, now I know you want like a dense sponge, like a makeup sponge, and you want to put paint on, unload paint so that there's not a whole lot on the sponge, and then you want to do all over your stencil. I didn't know that, so I just kept having bleed through, and I'd have to wipe it off, possibly sand it if it was already dried, and start over. Then I learned that you could use a spray adhesive on the back of the stencil. So I grabbed some spray adhesive and I put it on there, let it dry a little bit so it's just tacky, set it down, and then started doing my stenciling. It took forever, you guys, to do all of these tables. Sealing the tops of the tables took forever. And then one morning, my husband was leaving for work and he said he would help me carry the table outside so that I could work on it outside while the kids were playing. So we did, and I went out there and I painted it or sealed it or something like that, and it's now stuck out there because I can't carry it back in by myself. So me and the kids went inside, we had lunch, whatever. Later in the day we went back outside and the entire top of my table was bubbled and cracking, and it looked like trash. I had to redo the top of that table so many times. Then I finally got them all finished, listed them for sale on Facebook Marketplace. One of my friends from high school, said, "Oh my gosh, those are awesome, I want them." Like, okay, cool. I forgot to take the staging decorations off of the coffee table after I was done listing them. So I had a glass bowl full of rocks and succulents sitting on that table all night long. Then the next day, I pulled that glass bowl off and it took the paint with it because it hadn't cured yet, and I had this heavy bowl sitting on it. I had to do the top again. But now I have a buyer, so I had to text her and be like, "I screwed up. I have to redo the top of this table. I am so sorry. Bear with me." So I am putting the paint, I had to resand it all down, reprime it, putting paint on it. Now the paint is not matching. It's looking like it's a different color. It was streaky. I don't even know. Like, it was bad. But I eventually got it finished and I sealed it and I sold it to them. I'm just gonna go ahead and take a guess and say that they didn't hold up because I should have used Bondo, not wood filler. There was probably some bleed through on the legs because I didn't know what I was doing. And I'm gonna say that they probably chucked these tables. And if this is the case, Sean Carey, I am so sorry. I don't really have anything else to say besides I'm sorry. But in a perfect world, had I known better like I do now, and they came out perfectly, the numbers would be $15 for the tables. The supplies were the supplies were $20. Then I sold the tables for $250, giving me a profit of $215. So that one was really profitable. That one was good. Except that now I feel guilty about them. But it's okay. I'm learning. You know, you guys are learning too. All right. Ooh, this one's my favorite. Okay, so a woman messaged me. No, she didn't message me. I messaged her. She had listed an antique dresser for free. They bought this house and they're moving in, and they found that somebody left behind an old dresser and it was free. So, you know, it was right in my price range. So my husband and I went and picked it up. I knew this thing was gonna be a lot of work because the varnish on it was like caked on. I don't even know how to explain it, but it was rough. But I could see that behind all that nasty varnish was some beautiful antique tiger oak. I couldn't wait to get my hands on it, brought it home, and I had to strip this old varnish off. So I got like some citrus strip and I painted it onto the top and onto each drawer. I removed the hardware, painted the stripper on, and then I covered it in plastic to keep it wet. You just want to seal all of that in. I let it sit and then took a scraper and started scraping. This old varnish on it was so thick I had to strip everything twice. Took a while. So stripped it twice, and then I cleaned each drawer front and the top of the dresser with mineral spirits to deactivate that stripper. Something else that you can do if your stripper isn't taking off everything, when you're cleaning it with the mineral spirits, you can get a very fine steel wool and kind of buff it, and it'll take off all the rest of that yucky that you don't want there anymore. I let it dry, and then I started sanding. The veneer was peeling on each side of the dresser, so rather than removing all of the veneer, I glued down the loose spots. So I put some wood glue into there, clamped it, and let it dry. And then in the places where the veneer had chipped, I filled with wood filler and sanded it down smooth. If you look at the picture, you can see that one foot is different than the other. I removed all of the casters. It was on the original caster wheels. I took those off, and then to make the feet match, I flipped the dresser onto its back, and I used like a reciprocating saw, some sort of saw, I don't remember, to cut off a portion of the foot to make it match the broken foot. Another option, would be, rather than cutting the good foot, you can use clay, Play-Doh, whatever you have, and mold it around the good foot, let it harden, take it off, and then you can fill that mold. You now have a perfect mold of the foot. You can fill that with Bondo or an epoxy putty, something that's going to be hard. Let it harden, take it out, glue it on. Perfect. I didn't know that back then though, so I just cut it down to match, sanded them, and then it looked like there was never even a problem. After everything was dried and sanded, I primed the body of the dresser, painted it black. It's a rich black is the name, by Folk Art Home Decor chalk paint. I love that stuff. It is super, super thick, so you can thin it out and it goes a really long way, and it's very pigmented. You don't have the problem of some blacks are kind of a dark gray. Some of them have that blue tint to them. This paint is black. It's actual black. So I painted the body of the dresser black, and then I sanded down to that beautiful raw wood the top of the dresser and those drawer fronts where I stripped. Once I had those all sanded down, exposing that beautiful wood, I stained it with, I think it was a Minwax American Walnut. Had a little bit of an orange tone to it, which isn't super popular anymore, but I really just wanted to bring out that tiger striping on the wood, and it was perfect. It was beautiful. And then because I had used a stripper, mineral spirits, an oil-based stain, and I had all of these oil products on that wood, I didn't want to use a water-based sealer to seal it because you'd have to wait so many days for the oils to completely absorb and the wood to dry. I didn't want to do that, so Emma, stop. So I used an oil-based polyurethane semi-gloss to seal off the top and the drawers. But I wanted to keep that really matte black on the rest of the dresser. So instead of using the polyurethane on it, I sealed it in a clear wax that will keep it very matte. There's no shine to it. You essentially rub the wax on and then buff it back off, like any excess, and it hardens and it protects the paint and it's water resistant and all that. I kept the original hardware, which some of the hardware involved prying off little keyhole prong things, but I kept them and I cleaned them using a boil of vinegar and water and then scrubbing off all the nastiness. And I gave them a little bit of a sand to help the paint stick, spray painted them black, and then gave them a top coat of like a clear gloss enamel. And I put the tools back on and staged it, and it sold immediately. So many people loved it. They're like, I wish it would match the rest of my decor. That is gorgeous. I got the dresser for free. The paint was $10, and you know, obviously I used sandpaper and stain and all of that. I didn't really write down estimates of how much using portions of all of those would have cost, which I do recommend doing in the future. But oh, I did. I said $20. $20 for supplies, $10 for paint, and then it sold for $300, leaving me a profit of $280. That's wrong. It's $270. Either way, great profit. Okay, moving on to the green cabinet is what I call it. So there was a china cabinet, hutch, I don't really know what to call it, listed on Facebook Marketplace for free. So my husband and I went and picked it up. So it was like the bottom buffet part and then the top cabinet part. And rather than flipping them together, I separated them, took a page out of Katie Scott's book, thank you Katie, and turned them into two separate pieces. So I first worked on the green cabinet, and I decided to turn it into like a decorative display cabinet, kind of like a curio cabinet sort of thing. And I wanted it to have a little bit more of a boho vibe. Things are slowly starting to move from farmhouse being really popular into like the mid-century modern decor is really popular, boho is really popular, and I was kind of just trying to bring the two of them together. And so I removed the two side glass panels, which there's only a door in the middle. These two side panels don't open. So I removed the glass, and I had a hard time getting the glass out. So one of them I was able to remove. The other one, I couldn't get it out. And I didn't want to do this, but I had no choice. I ended up having to smash the glass out of it, which I regretted later because I could have used that with the idea that I ended up going with, which was burlap. And I ended up completely removing those two frames, and my plan was to staple burlap to them so that the front would be showing burlap, but the wood on those frames was so thin And even with the smallest nail or the smallest staples I could find, it was splitting the wood. So I had to repair the split wood and then come up with a different way to attach these. Now, had I still had a whole piece of glass, I could have just put it on there and stuck the glass in, but I didn't have it anymore. So I went digging through my scrap wood and stuff, and I found a couple pieces of like old flooring, like floorboards, and I cut them down to size and I decoupaged the burlap onto it. So I got Mod Podge glue, coated the whole piece of wood with it, laid the fabric over it, and then with a watered down Mod Podge, I sealed over the top, let it dry, and then I popped those into the frames. The glass also had a gold design on it that I wasn't a fan of, like on the door, and it kind of aged it. It dated it very much. So I used rubbing alcohol and scrubbed it off, and then it was like it was never there. I painted this piece in a custom color. It was a mix of folk art, chalk paint, Spanish moss, and a little black. I was really hoping that 1 8-ounce jar would cover this entire cabinet, especially since I'm adding black into it, and it did not. So I had to order another, and then we got hit with some storms, which delayed my shipping. So then that was put on hold for a very long time, and when I was finally able to get down the stairs after about a month, I got right back to that piece, gave it another coat of paint. I got contact paper. It was like a gold geometric pattern that I put onto the back of it, and I decided I was going to do a custom base for it, like DIY wife. So I built a base, and when they tell you measure twice, cut once, it's for a reason, because I built that entire base, went to put it on, and it didn't fit. I had to do it over again. So I did it all over again. It fit perfect this time, but it looked funky. Now luckily, this was all wood that I had in my shed. I didn't buy any of this. This was all leftover scrap wood that I already had. And the base looked so weird. I think I should have a picture of the original base. It was made of pine. I did not know at the time that pine doesn't stain. So I'm like, okay, it's way too bright. It doesn't match. I'll stain it. Oh my God. Pine does not stain, and that looked horrible. So blotchy. So then I decided I would do a paint wash. Also doesn't work because pine doesn't absorb evenly. So then I decided I'll just paint it. So then I painted it a shade of brown and trying to get it to match the burlap. It did not. So I decided, okay, let me go look at the DIY wife's video where she gives the tutorial, see what kind of wood she used. She used red oak. So I went to the store, spent $25 on the wood to build a red oak base, stained it in a rustic beige, and it was gorgeous. It fit perfect, it matched perfect, it was beautiful. I used the original pull on the door, but I spray painted it gold to match that gold design in the back. I somehow lost, during all this time, I lost the magnetic latch for the door, so I had to buy a new one and replace it. Found it after the fact, of course. I used the original hinges. I cleaned those up and spray painted them gold as well. I sealed the whole thing, I think, in a satin finish, and it was beautiful. I almost didn't part with it, but I listed it for sale, and I was super impatient. I'd had this thing in my house for months, partly working on it and partly just sitting down there because I was injured and I couldn't work on it. And I wanted to do the next piece and the next piece, and I wanted to make some money off of it. And so I listed it, and I was way too eager to get rid of it. And so I just kept lowering the price and lowering the price. I listed it for $350, which it was totally worth $350. That thing was gorgeous. I lowered the price so much that I ended up selling it for $190. I barely made a profit off of it. I profited $128. If I hadn't been so eager to lower the price, and I would have known at the time, because this was when Facebook started putting all of those ads on Marketplace, and they started offering shipping and putting all of these businesses rather than sellers like you and I, like normal people selling stuff. It was actual companies that offered shipping and all that. All of lay people like us, we all got pushed to the bottom of the list, so we hardly even showed up on Marketplace anymore. I didn't think about the fact that I could just delete the listing and relist it to bump it back up to the top, because the whole renew your listing thing, it doesn't actually work. It just doesn't. But I didn't know that. And so I just left the original listing on there forever and ever, kept dropping the price until it finally sold. So learn from my mistakes. Delete the listing and relist it. Do not cut yourself short. Sell yourself short. You know what your piece is worth. You get that amount for it and nothing less. I think that's about enough for now. I only made it about halfway through all of the pieces that I have done. Next time I will talk about what I did with the bottom of that 2-part piece, the bottom of that hutch. And probably take you through all the way up until now, and you'll see my mistakes become fewer and fewer, and my products, my finished product gets better and better, and it's all a learning experience, and it is so fulfilling, especially once you make that sale and you know that it wasn't all for nothing. So let me know if you guys have any questions. If you want, I can link the products that I used in the description. If you're trying to get started and don't really know where to start, let me know. I can help you out. I do have a video of my son's dresser flip coming your way that shows a bit more about the actual process. And then once I've gone through all of those, then I will start recording the flipping process so you can actually see the whole thing start to finish, and hopefully learn something or enjoy it. So I hope to see you guys next time. Don't forget to like this video and subscribe. Thank you guys. Bye.